Ever wondered why Ukraine, despite having big missiles in its arsenal, doesn't use it on Russian cities? We will tell you all about that, but before that, if you're a fan of non-corporate funded free news and analysis, you have landed on the right YouTube channel. We publish 3 videos a day, first at 9:15 a.m. EST, second at 1:30 p.m. EST, and the third at 5:30 p.m. EST. So next time the YouTube algorithm rejects your peace deal, tell it that your terms are only going to get harsher. Okay, let's begin. In the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia, Ukrainians are experiencing significant pummeling. There is a prevailing belief both within Ukraine and among certain Western circles that it is both legally and morally justifiable for Ukraine to respond against Russia. This sentiment is bolstered by statements from prominent figures such as NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, who have voiced support for Ukraine taking action. However, it is important to distinguish between what is legally and morally permissible and what is considered prudent or wise. Economically, any Ukrainian counterstrikes against Russia might have limited impact due to Russia's vast size and resources, essentially amounting to minor disruptions. Historically, we have observed that intensive bombings such as those in World War II or Vietnam often bolster the resolve of the targeted population, uniting them against the aggressor. Similar actions against Russia could inadvertently strengthen its national resolve rather than weaken it. To significantly damage the Russian economy, a campaign of the magnitude seen in World War II against Germany and Japan would be required. However, such a strategy is not feasible for NATO without risking catastrophic consequences, including the potential for nuclear escalation. The potential for escalation in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia is a significant concern, especially if Ukraine were to strike a high-profile Russian target or cause substantial civilian casualties. Such actions could compel the Russian government to respond aggressively, exacerbating tensions. This situation is further complicated by voices within Russia questioning the duration Putin will tolerate the extensive military support Ukraine receives from NATO without taking direct action against NATO countries themselves. In this context, the possibility of deploying NATO ground troops might resurface as a strategic consideration. However, the introduction of NATO forces into Ukraine doesn't necessarily equate to an immediate engagement with Russian forces. In a scenario where Russian advances threaten significant territorial gains, NATO troops could be deployed defensively to protect a reduced area of Ukraine, including Kiev. This strategy aims to stabilize the situation and create a foundation for ceasefire talks and peace negotiations without preconditions. If Ukraine were to lose significant territory, it would necessitate cautious and clear negotiations with Moscow to avert unintended conflicts with Russian forces. Such diplomacy aims to prevent direct military engagement, particularly under circumstances where Western military presence in Ukraine could escalate tensions. Western military leaders would be notably hesitant to deploy troops without the assurance of air support. However, the scenario where both NATO and Russian air forces are active over Ukraine significantly raises the risk of aerial confrontations. To avert the possibility of NATO being entangled in a conflict with Russia, it would be necessary for Western governments to not only persuade Ukraine to agree to a ceasefire, but potentially also to direct the Ukrainian military to retreat towards NATO-established positions, a move that some Ukrainian forces might already be inclined to make. Subsequently, establishing a broad demilitarized zone overseen by United Nations troops would be critical to maintaining peace and preventing further escalations. However, should even a limited engagement by NATO forces inadvertently lead to a comprehensive conflict with Russia, the risk of escalation to nuclear warfare could significantly increase, bringing humanity to the precipice of a catastrophic confrontation. In such a scenario, a show of force, such as a nuclear detonation over a neutral area like the Black Sea, could be employed by Russia as a stern warning, with threats possibly aimed at American military installations in Western Europe rather than civilian targets. In light of the stark choices between Ukrainian defeat and the grave risks of escalation, it is crucial to make convincing effort towards negotiating a compromise peace with Russia. This approach must be pursued while the West still possesses significant leverage in discussions. Achieving a total victory for Ukraine has become clearly unfeasible. meaning any resolution to the conflict will necessitate a form of compromise. Procrastination only worsens the potential terms of such a compromise for Ukraine and escalates the risks for the international community.